Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's live stream show. I'm Judy the YouTube Lawyer here from Cary, North Carolina. And today we do have another serious topic. We're going to be talking about a very recent incident that just happened in my town, not too far away from where I live and work in Cary on the Greenway. On Wednesday morning on the White Oak Greenway, which is a nice paved jogging, biking/running trail where a lot of people in the suburbs like to go to enjoy time with their families, there was a man who suddenly decided to assault an Iranian man as well as an older Chinese American man. And part of it was recorded by the Chinese American man's daughter. So what happened was that this assailant, who was also previously jogging on the trail, overheard the Iranian immigrant speaking to his friend on the cell phone in Farsi. And apparently this made the man upset. So he started spitting on the man and threw a punch at him. He didn't actually make contact with the man's face because the man quickly was able to turn his face, but he did drop his cell phone in the process. And this is where the news got a little confusing because there were multiple articles in the local news saying slightly different things. But from what I gather, the assailant also threw his water bottle either at the Iranian man or at the Chinese American older man because he saw the Chinese American man's daughter starting to film him. So he got mad, started yelling at them, quote, "Go back," and also started yelling and trying to assault them. So ultimately the police were able to track down who this person was because of the daughter's photo of the assailant on her phone. But unfortunately, the police, as well as the district attorney, the Wake County District Attorney Lauren Freeman, decided not to file or pursue any criminal charges against a person, saying that instead this was not racially or ethnically motivated whatsoever. There was no hate crime, and instead the man was having a, quote, mental health crisis. So this has obviously upset many people. Some friends and I did try to reach out to the police, try to get more answers. And apparently they did get a lot of queries and angry citizens demanding to know why this man was allowed to get away with assaulting two people with multiple witnesses involved. And they cared enough to create something on their website, the town of Cary's website, where the police officer in charge of PR directed me to this also when I contacted him asking for more details about it. So I would like to share the screen here, which is on the town of Cary website. And this is a suburb in North Carolina near Raleigh. And there is a growing population of Asian Americans here. So it's to the point where I felt pretty comfortable living around here after living in North Carolina for more than 20 years. Moving here from DC, it was a big change, but I thought that this was a safe place to live where we could go places and see lots of diversity, where people got along. Unfortunately, this incident has made both myself as well as many of my friends more wary and scared of being out in public because you never know if some, quote, crazy person or person having a, quote, mental health crisis is going to come out and assault you and then get away with it. So if people want to search, this is on the townofcary.org website under the newsroom and news releases. Newsroom says questions from the citizens. What happened on the Greenway? Was the motivation of race considered or investigated? And they said they pursued this investigation to the fullest extent. They put as many as 10 Cary police officers working on the investigation, despite it being a misdemeanor offense. And they concluded that the assault was not racially motivated. Based on what was being reported and using various investigative resources to examine the motive, investigators were able to determine the motivation for the assault, and it was not race. While much of the investigation cannot be shared, what we can say is that other than the jogger and the victims being of different races, there is no other evidence to suggest that his actions were racially motivated. Why wasn't he charged with assault? The charge for simple assault is a misdemeanor, punishable for a person with no prior convictions by up to 1 to 30 days in jail, or could be punished with a fine or community service. We took an in-depth look into all known information about the suspect. So the identity of the suspect has not been released at all, but you can see on the thumbnail the photo that was taken by the Chinese American man's daughter. And, basically the guy is not being punished. At first I thought, well, perhaps he was taken away to be examined at a psychiatric hospital like Holly Hill or something, but then looking more closely at the district attorney's interview about this, where she does look pretty shaken up and emotional, but ultimately no charges were filed. But it sounds more like she had hoped that the man was going to get mental health treatment. So there is nothing that is going to be officially done about this whatsoever. So with me today, I'm very happy to have another Asian American local leader here, Jeanie Chang. I'm going to add you to the stream here. Thank you so much for being here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Yes,
okay,
I can. Oh, great. Let me try to adjust this here. Just trying to figure out the StreamYard and stuff. So let me read a little bit from your very illustrious bio here. Jeanie Chang is a licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of Your Change Provider, PLLC, an interdisciplinary practice founded on solutions and cultural confidence. So you're also a #1 best-selling author and accomplished international speaker for corporations, community organizations, and colleges on topics such as burnout, resilience, mindfulness, stress, workplace wellness, etc. I'm sorry, I was trying to click through this other article that I was going to show later. And so it looks like you wear many different hats. Towards the bottom of your bio, it says you're an active volunteer in the Asian American community. You enjoy serving as president and chairman of the Asian Mental Health Collective and national director of the National Association of Asian American Professionals Self-Care and Wellness Program, which you founded in 2019. You're also a mental health facilitator for student veterans in North Carolina. And recently you founded your own nonprofit organization called Authentic Self-Care and Wellness, whose mission is to support mental health nonprofits around the world. And then you also have a new YouTube channel, which I hope you'll tell us more about too. So, okay, so tell us a little bit more about your background, Jeanie, because I did notice your bio didn't say like where you're from, where you grew up, where you went to school.
Sure. Yeah, I kept it professional. Right. So I'm in your backyard. You're in your backyard as well. I'm in the Raleigh, North Carolina. Oh, hey, Kathy, watching from Houston. So I also moved from the DC area in 2006. So it's been a while. I really want to say that we are completely North Carolinians. So even hearing a little bit more about the case is a little bit triggering, right? Because it's in our backyard. Mm-hmm. But I always like to share, when I first moved in the DC area, I was a full-time mom, stay-at-home mom, and we had our 4th kid here in North Carolina. So at the time, I was in a blur. 4 kids under the age of 6.
Wow.
Not 6 kids.
Not 6 kids
under the age of 6. Please excuse that. And then raising kids. And actually, it was me interacting with some folks that I met through NAP early on in my stay-at-home mom days here in North Carolina, where I was really trying to discover myself. And I had just finished graduate school, business school, and did not like it. And so I thought, I don't think I could be doing business for the rest of my life if I don't like it, So I was looking for my passion at the time. So I always like to share that mental health found me. The field of mental health found me, meaning I hadn't planned on being in this field, but I'm meant to be in this field. And I come from a diverse background where I started as a journalist, so very comfortable on camera. And then I went to business school because I thought that was the best thing to do to look good, but it wasn't my passion. But what I say about identity is what I'm doing now, I'm come full circle using all those talents, being a, speaker, speaking in corporations and organizations and colleges on mental health, specifically to the AAPI community, And then also using my business skills to be an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I run my own practice, right? So all of this is utilized to be, I believe, a well-rounded clinician, or the clinician that I am today, which is mainly serving now nearly 100% the API community, which I think is really cool. If you think about mental health and mental health stigma in our community, where it's not as talked about, it's shifting, but still, even now, there's such a stigma surrounding mental health and mental illness. I'll explain the difference. But it's kind of neat that my practice has become 100%, nearly, I would say 98% API.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool.
Yeah, and you're serving such a big need, because I don't even know of any other Asian American therapists around here. I don't know if you knew my cousin Leroy, but he was a NAP president long time ago. Like,
yeah, I met him. Yes, I did meet him.
Okay. Well,
yes, I did meet him. So yeah, that was super cool. I met him. Gosh, like it's 2019. Yeah, that was only a couple years ago. I met him in 2019, but it feels like such a long time ago, because 2020 was a long year
before COVID.
But no, I did meet him, and you're right. There are not a lot of us in the area, but there are some. There's the couple South Asian, and maybe I'm the only East Asian, perhaps, but it's growing. Nationally, there are a lot more API clinicians, but, and I also serve, obviously, national corporations as a speaker, but locally, yes, I want to say it's almost 100% API. So yeah, especially in light of what happened this week, comes at a time when we're traumatized, right? Following just COVID, then George Floyd, then the increase in anti-Asian hate crimes since the beginning of the year, I would say February. And then we had Atlanta, and then we have this. So
yeah, plus even more that we haven't even touched on, which I guess we can talk about later, but we're not going to have a show that lasts like 10 hours long to listen.
I know.
Things like hate crime, assault, killing. Yeah, but I did mention my cousin Leroy, because his wife is Filipino American, and she's a psychiatrist in Chapel Hill. So I don't know if you've ever met her, Catherine Soriano.
Oh, I've heard of her. No, I haven't met her. Though.
Yeah, but she does therapy. Yeah, so psychotherapy in Chapel Hill off of Franklin Street.
Oh, good to know. Good to know.
She treats a lot of college students.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I work with a lot of college students too, because again, especially when you're talking about the API community, there's not a lot of us. And we do have challenges that are unique to our culture as well. So it's super, super important to understand that, and especially in light of what's happening today, where our identity, I want to say we're going through somewhat, I would say, an identity crisis, trying to figure out who we are in reference to all the racial trauma and collective trauma that we've been experiencing specifically the past 8 weeks, but over the course of a year,
That's right. Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to share that little news clip where you were one of the featured speakers, because, I thought that was cool. I was like digging around online. I was like, hey, Jeanie already got invited to speak on this thing. So hold on a second. Let's see. Let's try to bring up that WRAL news clip. Yeah.
I'm glad they did the story.
Yeah. So there you are. Do you see yourself? Okay. Yeah. So, can you hear it?
It's a little soft, but what I'm saying is I question the mental health issues, quote unquote, because, and I'll talk about it, people can't hear it and I'm glad that Amanda Lamb did the story. It's always, and they got a lot of emails from what's going on, from the fact that the perpetrator said, oh, having a mental health crisis. The first thing out of my mouth was, and I'm a mental health clinician. What does that mean? I myself went, I'm sorry, mental health issues and even mental health crises. Oh, that's yeah. She really, okay. So that was the daughter that got that on camera.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess
no charges due to mental health. Now, I'm going to be honest, the language is, I would say, not correct. It should be, if you're going to do no charges due to mental illness, which is a diagnosis of a mental health disorder. But when you're talking about mental health, let me be very frank. The definition of mental health is your emotional, social, and psychological well-being. It's something that we deal with every day. It's the health of our mind. So to have no charges due to mental health, it's saying basically, we could all say that.
Yeah, everybody's stressed
So
out
that's
or
not
got some
accurate.
anxiety.
And
Yeah.
I think that, but I do know that they meant well, but that's not accurate. So that's me saying that. Going, I don't
Yeah.
really, you can see I'm pretty skeptical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. How did you get contacted by the WREL?
Well, I mean, I get interviewed every so often by the news outlets on mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So I just remember literally say I was one of those people that also emailed saying, hey, the API community is upset. Is there going to be a follow-up on this, or what's more? I need more information, because as a clinical provider, I don't think that's acceptable. Mental health issues. I preach on mental health in all my talks, saying, hey, mental health is normal. It's something that we think about the minute we wake up to the moment we go to bed. So for someone to say mental health issues, and I just see what Kathy says, mental health and mental illness are not the same. So it may be very different if it says right there, no charges due to mental illness. Where I'm going to be, here's a definition. Mental illness, the diagnosis of a mental health disorder causes significant changes to your behavior, emotions, their thinking. So that I might say, hey, he might have mental illness if he was properly psychologically evaluated. I don't know. That was something I asked the reporter. Are they going to get him a psychiatric evaluation? For sure, to make that a case. But when you say due to mental health, I share mental health is normal. I mean, it's what we deal with every day. So you wake up thinking about your mental health, going, hey, how am I feeling today? I'm not feeling good. I'm upset, right? So I'm just being honest. That's not clinically accurate. So that to me wasn't acceptable.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I wanted more to be done too, or I wanted to find out whether or not there was a formal evaluation.
Yeah. And Kathy is a nurse from Texas. Yeah. So she agrees. Yeah. Totally different.
No, mental illness, completely different matter. Right. And so even seeing that title is annoying.
Yeah. And it kind of leads you that, okay, this guy is not like diagnosed as a like schizophrenic, or he doesn't have Tourette's syndrome or some real active medical diagnosis where he couldn't control himself.
Right. If there's no, that's why I said,
really
mental illness causes significant changes that you can't control. So then I'd understand that. But to me, it seems somewhat targeted because of the language. If the witness said that she heard him say, go back, there were other people on the trail. Mental illness doesn't separate what you're going to do. I mean, if you really are suffering from a mental illness, you have significant changes to your thought. You can't think, you'll just do whatever. And it seemed very targeted to those specific people that happen to be non-Caucasian.
Yeah.
And so I had my own assumptions, but definitely I think those assumptions come from what we've been experiencing across the country.
I did see on a different news channel in their report, they did specifically say that there were other people on the trail, but those other non-foreign looking people were not targeted on the trail.
So mental illness does not distinguish that. If you have mental illness, you're not going to go, hey, I can distinguish between who I'm going to attack. No, you're not able to, I would say the thought processes and behavior may be impaired, but to me, it didn't seem impaired. But again, that's my assumption. Right. And so, but to still say due to mental health crisis, I want to know if that's accurate. Meaning, was he formally evaluated to get that?
Yeah, and I doubt it. Yeah, I mean, it just seems like, let's go visit him and talk to him, and then, just not even a slap on the wrist. It's just like, okay, have a good day, sir. Now you can go head back to the trailway and go out there scaring people, screaming, yelling. Because one of my friends on Facebook did respond and said that she had heard from another Asian American woman that the same guy had been like yelling at her on the trailway too. I don't know if they reported that.
No, I didn't know that. What?
Yeah.
See, things like this need to be reported. What worries me is the fact that it could happen again by the same person and maybe worse, right? We've seen that happen.
Yeah.
In different stories and cases. So, but that's my clinical perspective on it. And I'm glad that they did the story on it and followed up on it. But I mean, it is a little bit jarring when it's in your own neighborhood. So and the past 6 weeks and the past 2 weeks now since Atlanta, I mean, people are experiencing trauma. So in my clinical, perspective here, being traumatized keeps you on this level of being hyper alert, where everything you do when you're outside now, you're like, okay, is that racist? Right? I mean,
Yeah,
because
or
of
who's around
fear.
me, who's coming towards me,
Right.
do I
Or
have
what
a
does that look
weapon? Yeah.
mean? You know, you second guess everything, and you are just definitely hyper aroused in the sense of, oh my gosh, what is that? And that's our trauma being, you know, coming into play. But that's understandable. But that is just sad.
Mhm.
So I think I shared with the reporter that when we know that some action's being taken, it is comforting, even if the action ends up not being perhaps what we thought it would be. You still want to see something, and it makes you feel like, almost like, basically someone has your back, is basically what I'm trying to say. The authorities have your back. That's really important in just your well-being, going, hey, they got my back, or we can really rely on the authorities to do something. And again, I'm not trying to blast anybody here. I'm just saying, to me, and I think the reason why the public is upset is it doesn't quite add up. And
Mhm.
so that's why, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
Exactly. And,
mhm.
Lauren Freeman, I actually sort of know her. Like, I had seen
Okay.
her at the courthouse and chit-chatted ages ago. I'm sure she doesn't remember me, but I did send a quick little letter to her a few days ago. I don't expect her to respond because I'm sure she gets tons of angry emails or letters from people. But I did look back and I was like, well, wait a second. I looked through my old emails and apparently, remember, I don't know if you knew Hans Huang, but he was
Mhm.
also a former president of NAP the year
Yeah.
before I was.
I do know
Yeah.
him. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So apparently Hans had helped to throw a fundraiser for Lauren Friedman when she was running for district attorney, like back in 2014. So, you would
Interesting.
like to think that, okay, Lauren Freeman is cool. I met her dad while campaigning at a polling place like in 2008 or something. So, she's a cool, open-minded person. We'd like to think that, okay, no racism here or whatever. But then on the other hand, it just has me scratching my head like, what is going through the minds of these people that have the power to at least bring a misdemeanor criminal charge against someone? Is it okay to throw a punch at
Mhm.
somebody on the
Right.
freeway? Is it
No.
okay to
Mhm.
throw a water bottle at somebody and spit on them, especially with COVID? I mean, so how is this guy ever going to learn his lesson? I really
Right.
wish they had at least published that guy's name,
Right.
so we can
Yeah.
do
I
our own
mean,
investigation. It's like, who is this guy? Is he connected? Is he from some rich family, friend, relative of somebody on the police department or in the
you know what?
district
I mean,
attorney's
those are
office?
all very
Yeah.
valid questions. We've
Yeah.
seen it done, right? We don't know the connections, and that's a very good point. And you brought up a really good point that this is in the White Oak Greenway. It is so family friendly there. In our backyard in Cary, of all places. That's what also makes it difficult, because this is where you have a lot of kids around. I mean, kids freely go on their bikes and walk, and you don't think twice. And this is in, what was it? It was like 11 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, I look at all those facts and think it's hard, because just, I mean, I think the daughter said it. She will think twice now about going out, and or arm herself with people, meaning making sure I'm not alone. That's really very taxing already when we're dealing with COVID. To
Yes.
think, okay, who else am I going to take on the
Exactly.
Greenway to be
Yeah,
safe?
it's like you can't even like let your parents, those of us who do have elderly parents around, who are still out and about, I mean, luckily we live in a suburb where most people drive cars everywhere and we're not constantly out walking around. But then you can't even
Right.
relax in your own park
Yeah.
or your neighborhood walking around. Cause I feel like now, whenever I go places, I'm bringing something in my hand that can be used as a weapon, or pepper spray, or make sure I always have my cell phone in case I need to record somebody doing something
Mhm.
against me or against somebody else. And it is kind of scary. You don't want to be alone anymore. It's like, who's around me? Like, what,
Right.
somebody coming up behind me. What
And
can
I
I
have
do to
heard
defend
more
myself?
people taking self-defense classes,
Yeah.
especially women. And I think that's great. First of all, we should always, I mean, that's something you could do even regardless what was happening, but that's still jarring too, knowing
Yeah.
that the increase in self-defense classes has gone up, or the demand for that, because of what's happening. But that is the reality, and it's important to feel secure. So do everything you can to feel secure.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, this is the state of what April 2021 is somewhat sad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what about you and your family? Like, have you proactively like changed your behavior in the last, say, like year or so after hearing about all these like assaults out of the blue, where suddenly some
Mhm.
guy like runs up and knocks some elderly Asian person onto the ground and
Yeah.
causes their death?
Well, I think I've been more proactive. So I have so two of the kids, a high schooler and a middle schooler, are home doing virtual learning, and they've chosen to do that for the rest of the year, despite kids going back to school. So I feel my mind is a little bit more at ease. We chose to do that because of COVID, but now in light of everything going on, I'm like, you know what? Okay, so you're home a little bit more, but they're going to school for sports, but that's pretty much it. And I feel like they're when they're with their classmates and coaches, that is in a safe space. Now I have two college kids though, so I'm very proactive. I think about with parents, and I shared this in an interview that I did on talking to your kids about racism. You speak to your kids about anti-Asian hate or anti-Asian racism in different ways depending on the age. So my kids are a little older, middle school, high school, and college. The college ones I'm really real about. I'm like, okay, should we get you pepper spray to my daughter, right? Always travel with somebody. And I think it's just being realistic, and she's very well aware. And I will even ask her point blank, okay, so have you heard any microaggressions? I mean, it's the very thing is, you may not be able to change what's happening, but you can at least talk about it and express your emotions. As a clinician, that's really healthy to talk about, hey, how you're feeling about something. Someone said something to you the other day, it really bothered you. You felt a little offended. What are some of the things that went through your head? So I talk openly with my kids. And then my son, who's away at college as well, we just ask him. And so far, I would say that they're in a safe space with their fellow, peers. And it seems to be, I want to say, they're very well aware, but not to the point where they feel that they're feeling unsafe. Does that make sense? So that's good. And I think they would tell us that they felt unsafe, but we always just check in. So depending on your kids, it's really good to always check in, be proactive. Don't wait for them to come to you is what I tend to tell parents, because kids are still processing, and sometimes they don't know that's a microaggression that they're getting. So they're thinking, hey, what did they mean by that? What is this comment, or what did that look mean? So I'm always about checking with your kids daily. I mean, if you skip that one day, that's fine, but always ask open-ended questions to your kids. That's my advice to parents, especially in this time of now. Open-ended questions just means you don't get a yes or no answer. You're getting questions. You're asking questions like, so what was your day like? So they have to actually answer, oh, my day was bad, good, or, how good was this event that you went to, and things like that, where they're forced to give at least a couple sentences, depending on the age, right? Teenagers are like, I don't want to answer this, but still, things might come up for those conversations when you are engaging with them. So that's what I tell parents.
I see. And did you actually grow up in the DC area also?
I did not. So I grew up outside of Philadelphia in Wilmington, Delaware. And then I went to NYU for undergrad, and then went to DC for graduate school. So I moved to DC for a job to start my broadcast career. Cool. And I started it at the Associated Press Broadcast News Center in DC, covering President Clinton. So I was a journalist, so I do empathize a lot with TV and radio journalists, and just journalists in general, because I understand that field. But then I left it to go to business school, and then obviously the rest is history, what I'm doing now. So I like to use all of those career experiences to understand workplace mental health too. So I'm very passionate about working with professionals, and specifically API professionals, because again, I understand cultural nuances. We have our identity is very much, it's very unique in the sense of we have immigrant experience, and I'm looking at from that lens. But yeah, and then when we moved to the DC area, what I do miss, having come to North Carolina, which, by the way, when did you move to North Carolina?
2001 from.
Okay, so a little bit before me. I struggled moving to the north to this area because I wished it was more diverse. I remember thinking, okay, where are all the Asians?
Yeah, it was very jarring from the DC area, where you have tons of like Vietnamese restaurants all clustered around Clarendon, and there's like, what do you call it, Eden Center?
You're in Fairfax, Virginia. I mean, that's like Koreatown. So coming here, but I love it here. We raised our kids here. It has, Cary especially has really blossomed. The H Mart. And so a lot of the things in this area I love, and I wouldn't change it because I mean, there's a reason why we chose to move here too. So no, I loved moving here, and I'm really thankful, especially not missing the traffic in the DC area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a great place to raise kids. But again, it's about when I tell parents, especially now with mental health and understanding how to take care of yourself, be just as engaged with your kids, even a little more so these days, because of what's happening. And even with each other, with friends, I think we should be real about what's happening and be like, hey, how are you? What's going on? Like, how are you doing? I mean, fellow Asians, check in on each other. Non-Asians, please check in on your Asian friends. I did say that. I'm like, please. And I want to share this because some of your Asian colleagues, my friends, may be struggling. And if you're not Asian, just at least check in on them. Ask how they're doing. There's a lot going on, right? And even if you don't know what to share, it's always nice to be like, hey, I'm here. If you ever need any, I'm here for support. I think that's really important for our well-being, to not feel isolated, especially now when you're feeling traumatized. It's really important just to check in with one another.
Yeah, I did get a text from one of my good friends who is an African-American woman. And at first I was like, what? Of course I'm okay. This is kind of a strange text, like, hi, Judy, I just want to make sure you're doing okay. But that was a few weeks ago. And then later on, I started thinking that was really nice of her, to even think about that, to at least there's assurance that she knows what's going on out there in that world. Yeah, because I have seen other Facebook posts from other people that are kind of like ignorant, like, what? I haven't heard of any attacks on Asians. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what rock are you hiding under? Like, I guess they don't read the news like we do. I mean, clearly our news is kind of like biased because we're probably part of all these like Asian American activist groups and different Facebook groups and stuff. So I do hear a lot more about things that someone might not get from their own local news. But I was like, come on, you don't even know about that like crazy, gigantic guy in New York that just like pounded on and was kicking the head of that poor Filipino 65-year-old lady in New York City. Like, what the heck? Or that Filipino man that got shoved and then died from a head injury in Phoenix, Arizona. Right. Like, some people don't know about that.
You're right. No, a lot of people don't know. And I think you're right. You bring up a good point where it could be hurtful that they don't know. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It is true. We do need to check on each other. One of the things I'm really promoting a lot in best I can in my work is Asian and Black solidarity, because I feel like they went through it last year, or they still go through it. But I meant last year, right after George Floyd, everything blew up just like it is now. And I feel like we can learn a lot from our Black counterparts. I was really, really touched by a lot of my Black colleagues. All of them reaching out, just checking in. They didn't even have to say much. It's like I said, you don't need to solve the world's problems. You don't need to give all these solutions. Sometimes it's just really about empathy and compassion, saying, how are you? Oh, I'm here if you ever want to talk, or I'm thinking about you, right? That's all that really matters. I mean, people don't really need a lot. But I was going to say, it's so funny how people might not be checking the news. One of the things I say for self-care is limit your news, though, right? Because definitely don't be going down the rabbit hole of social media, doom scrolling. I mean, we do it. Yes, when I start catching myself doing, I stop. I find my news through Twitter feeds. I definitely know what's going on, even the latest. I mean, now I can't even keep up with all the hate crimes happening, right? Yeah. But I want to share that for your mental health, make sure you do limit what you watch, because some of these videos are very traumatic. Not some, a lot of them. Yeah. And even the photos are traumatic that they post. So it's really important to, especially if you're a lawyer and right. And I'm a clinician, we serve clients. I really want to make sure that I'm doing my best work. So if I start seeing something that's triggering, I don't watch it. I stop, because, and that is boundaries. It's having boundaries. So of course you can find your news in a quick Twitter feed, or just checking social media real quick, because I tell people, sure, it's good to be up on the news. You need to know what's going on. Definitely. But the minute you feel distressed from watching something, playing a video on Facebook, hearing something, seeing a graphic photo, seeing that, in the New York incident, the woman being stomped on, stop if it's distressing you, because it's just stressful.
Yeah, and it kind of consumes you. Yeah,
It
I feel like
consumes you, and then you end up
yeah,
traumatizing over and over again.
yeah.
And as a clinician, I don't want to see you traumatized over and over again, you know? So,
Yeah, and same thing with the George Floyd trial. So they kept playing over and over again all these videos of, the cop just like kneeling there while the crowd's getting all like anxiety ridden and telling him to stop, get off that man. So I've seen people post on Facebook and say they couldn't even watch the trial. Like they don't want to see it because it's so traumatizing for them. And I was like, yeah, I can understand, because I only watched a little bit here and there through the CNN website. And already I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know if I want to keep
I
watching
probably try to see maybe 40% of it. And the news can be triggering. So can you imagine some of these journalists that have to cover it? Some of these API journalists, I think they're also traumatized. So there is empathy and compassion needed for all of us, in all aspects of whatever you're doing. I love that this person, empathy does go a long way. And then empathy, which is like understanding the emotion behind things, finding the meaning behind words. Empathy leads to compassion. Compassion is the act of showing that empathy. And that's where we need to focus on. How are you showing compassion? Right? So, and the news is triggering. And I'm telling you now, from a clinical expert, it can be re-traumatizing over and over again when you don't need to be traumatized, so you can stop,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for being here, Larita. She's an attorney in Texas who also has her own YouTube channel.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, this case, I don't know. I hope that they, I don't know if we're going to have it more, uncovered, or if I don't know, but we'll say we're all kind of left in the air with this case.
Yeah. So the Cary Greenway case, definitely, I'm not going to forget about it. I was thinking, gosh, if it were a different time, if I were younger and more the old activist in me, we would have organized some sort of protest downtown, so people know that Asians or people in general aren't going to stand for this crap. Like, would that happen if the victims had been African American? Because there are a lot more vocal African American advocacy groups around here. Whereas with the Asian American groups, I don't even know if anybody had any concerted effort to do anything other than some.
And I think that's why we can learn from the Black community. I want us to learn from them. There's things that we can always learn from each other. Advocacy, activism, where it's new to us because we're still finding our voice, is what I say. As Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, South Asians, Southeast Asians, East Asians, West Asians, we're not a monolith. And so, but the thing is, a lot of this is a new experience where we're finding our voice right now. And what I'm looking at is that's positive. Like, it's good in the sense of we're coming together as a community. You're seeing all these across the nation, maybe not locally, but across the nation. Hate is a virus, Stop AAPI Hate, all these advocacy organizations really speaking out. That's great. That's going to help us locally to have that, the strength, that sense of belonging together. But we're still learning. So I think I share this, and I'm sure you've heard this. This is a marathon. Racism is a triathlon or Ironman. It's not a sprint. Right. And it's not, we're not trying to race to it. This is actually something that's there for the long run that we need to pace ourselves to fight through. So that's why I say it's an Ironman. So when you do an Ironman, which is, I don't know how many miles of swimming, biking, and running, I should know this, but it's a marathon at the end. It's 23.6 miles. God, you would think I used to do.
Why, you used to compete?
I used to do it, but I was going to say, you train for an Ironman, right? Obviously you have to, and you train for even half marathons. So we're in training. And so to fight systemic racism, to fight anti-Asian hate, to, really find Asian and Black solidarity, fight anti-Blackness in our community, we are in a training, we're in training mode right now, and it takes practice. So we're just learning. But yeah, I think we're just at the beginning of this. So I think it's important that we have these conversations, Judy, and talk about this and be open about it and see and check in on each other. And someone who's just said empathy goes a long way, TXC. Yeah, empathy does go a long way.
And I also do. I mean, another thing is, like, I have this employment discrimination trial that's coming up. So I've been kind of trying to juggle dealing with all this stuff and trying to deal with, preparing for a trial. But I do feel like once that trial is over, I would like to write a letter to the Iranian man who was also one of the victims, just because his address was made public in the police incident report, even though they didn't.
I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah. So he lives in Cary. And the funny thing is that, like, he's identified as white and his voter registration record said he's white, but because he was speaking in Farsi and, doesn't look like a, good old boy white person, he was still targeted by this
yeah.
person. So,
Hmm.
and then what's unfortunate is that the Chinese American man and his daughter,
Yeah.
their information is not released and they didn't want to have their information or their names known because they were afraid of being harassed.
Yeah.
So I have no way of reaching out to them. So, I hope
Mhm.
they're doing okay. But, I'm definitely going to send out a letter at least to the Iranian man and let him know, hey, we have your back. We hear about this, how are you doing? I just want to reach out to him to let him know that, look, people aren't going to all brush this aside like law enforcement did. And I'm sorry this happened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's great. Right. And in doing that, I think that's so supportive. I love that you're doing that. And this, I think if we did more of that, that's even speaking up. We don't have to literally go on camera all the time to speak up. Even sending a letter to the Iranian man and involved in it, just showing that to me is a source is like an act of activism that we are there and
Yeah. We're not going to just be quiet and be
right.
like,
We're not
oh,
going to be
that's
quiet
okay.
and just let
Well,
it lie.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think that's really helpful. And again, from a mental health perspective, that'll make him feel good.
Yeah.
Feel like, hey, I don't know who Judy is, but I appreciate it. And that's awesome, and
Yeah.
that's huge. I would want that,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
some of my friends did ask, like, what about a civil lawsuit? And I'm like, well, it depends on who this assailant is. I don't have any information about the assailant. They're not releasing his name, but if the assailant has assets, then maybe it would be worth it to sue the guy and teach him a lesson, because long time ago, one of the first cases I had when I moved to North Carolina, it involved a Vietnamese American man who was he was just announcing the fact that he was resigning from his job at a big corporation. And so this white woman that was one of his supervisors got so mad that she dumped hot coffee onto his head. And so he suffered some slight burns to his face and had to get medical treatment. And
Oh my,
ultimately the case settled, but I was like, gosh, what is this disrespect that people have towards Asians? Like, they think we're not going to go after them, that they're going to be able to just get away with it and nobody's going to speak up and law enforcement doesn't give a crap. The DA's office doesn't care. It's like, oh, well, it's okay. He's having a mental health crisis, or she was having a mental health crisis. Like,
yeah,
I just hate that this is
I
still
think you're
happening.
touching on something big that I want to talk about just with Asian identity, how we're viewed. We're talking about the model minority myth here. Um, yeah, hot coffee poured on his head. That's terrible, right? I mean, that's painful, first of all. We're talking about the model minority myth, right? So you're talking about people who generally, this social construct that's surrounding us is how we're viewed. We're viewed as people who follow the rules, are quiet, silent, stoic, do good, whatever, healthy, wealthy. And that is a stereotype. It's a harmful narrative. I always talk about it. It really has a lot of mental health implications. And that's part of it, what you just said. People going, well, they're Asian. They're not going to say anything. That's the image. So let me just do this. Right. And then when we do, it's still, because I hear this a lot, people still feeling like they're silenced or ignored. And so, and that's disheartening when you hear that going, yeah, I have spoken up, but I still feel like I'm pushed away or pushed aside and ignored. So what I share to that is, because we're talking about people in distress, then I'm like, then you just have to be persistent. If you really believe in what you're saying and what you're doing, then keep doing it and have that perseverance, and then also have your allies and your support around you, like us, band together, call us out, get people together, and you can do more with more voices.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
that's
that.
great.
We have been taking more. I mean, the API community has really taken strides this year, but there's still a lot more to be done. There's still a lot in the workplace that's ignored. Right. Speak up, but it takes practice. So I tell people, hey, it's not easy just to speak up. It takes some practice, but the more you do it, like the more you public speak, the easier it is. So I really believe that the more you speak out, the easier it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, the model minority, I simply say it. It's true. It's a harmful and it's false.
Mhm.
It's not true.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. But I kind of feel like it's only people that work for major corporations that would have to go through these like diversity training stuff, because once you're an adult, you're done with college, then there really is no more like dialogue or being forced to confront biases or discussion. People usually just stay in their same bubble of friends with the same political views, the same religious views, you know, only friends with people of the same race or ethnicity or religious background. And then people do become very isolated and don't really know about other cultures or other backgrounds or
You're right, they don't. But then, you can educate if they so want to hear you. I was going to share this, especially when it comes to activism. It's really hard. You cannot change someone else's mind. You can't change a person. We think we can, but no, usually what's happened is you changed, or you've done differently, or your interaction with them has changed. You're not changing that person. So I always share that it's hard to change someone else. Just know that. The only person you can really change is you. So do whatever you can to change what you need to change. I'm not talking change for somebody else. Just be like, you know what? This person's not hearing me out. I think I'm done. Meaning I'm done talking to this person. I say that for the sake of your well-being. Otherwise, it's aggravating, hurtful, distressful. Trying to talk to somebody like you're blue in the face. You've heard that term. You're talking to someone like you're hitting against brick wall. Then I'm like, okay, then stop talking to that person. That's what I
think about your own mental health. Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is a mental health concept. I'm like, this is very difficult to grasp when people are trying to change someone's mind. And I go, that's not going to work. I go, what's going to help you is you say your 2 cents and then move on, or be like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to change their mind. So I, for the sake of my own well-being, have to protect myself and stop. And I won't talk to this person about race or whatever you're going to talk about. Maybe they'll still be in your life, but you decide, I'm just not going to talk about racism. They don't get it. They're not going to be active about it. They don't really know that Asians may struggle. So I'm done. So I have said that, and I've said that to people, to my clients. That is really the only way that you're going to help yourself, because like I said, that's why sometimes when I watch debates and people debating, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know. Because you can't, I mean, now, even when you're doing the law, you are not really changing someone's mind. You're showing your case and all these facts and who's going to win the case, right? But at the end of the day, you're not changing someone's mind, if that makes sense, right? So that's really hard. That's my real talk, as TXC says.
Yeah, yeah. But Jeanie, I feel like there's so much you can talk to us about, because I am kind of interested in how you wound up becoming a licensed therapist, when it sounds like you did broadcast journalism for quite a while.
So I didn't do it quite a while. It was my dream to be the number one journalist in the world. No, I wanted to be the number one Asian American journalist. I admired Jeanie Chang, because I really feel like she was the only example I had growing up. So I'm not gonna tell you how old I am, but she was my person I looked up to. And then I was well on my way. I actually enjoyed the field of journalism. So it's not like I left it because I didn't like the field, but I left it, honestly. This is how I knew the field of mental health found me, is I didn't feel quite happy when I wasn't at work. Like, my identity was so wrapped up in work. And plus, when you're a journalist, you have no life. And I remember thinking, I'm 24. I want to have a life. I just remember thinking, maybe more maturely than I would have thought a 24-year-old might think. I kind of planned my life ahead 10 years and thought, am I going to still be happy doing this? And the answer that I came up with no. I'm not going to be happy doing this. So I actually left the field at the height of it. The last thing I did was interview Snoop Dogg.
What?
Yeah. I was like, by then I was an entertainment reporter. I kind of fell into that by accident. And that was my last thing I did. It was super cool. People ask me, what'd you interview about? I'm like, I can't remember, but I think he was in town. I think he was in town in DC for something. And so, so I did not leave it because I disliked my field. I left it because I felt like there was something off whenever I left the job, like when I went home, and I just felt empty. So I thought, oh, that's my mental health. So then I decided, as an Asian American, what do I do? I don't want to be a career dropout, because that's what I was thinking. I'm a career dropout. I went to NYU for journalism, and then now I'm dropping out of school. So dropping out of my career. So I went to business school. But I went to business school. It was like this: eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Where am I going to go to school? I got to look good. And so I chose business school because I thought it would make me look good. So I went to business school for marketing. I disliked it. At times I said I hated it, but I remember disliking it, going, why am I doing this? But I finished it.
Mhm.
And then during that time I had kids, right? So I had two kids in business school, and then ended up having 4 kids. So, and then I stayed
Wow.
at home for a little bit. So right after business school, I did stay home. I shared this with other stay-at-home moms. I really did enjoy staying at home. I chose to because I had 4 kids. So it made sense. And they were all under the age of 6. So that's crazy. But
Yeah.
I won't give I would pay anything to have those days back a little bit, even though I had no clue what day it was half the time. I was like, what day is it? What year are we in?
God.
But
Yeah.
now it's hard to believe that I actually stayed home for over 10 years because I have a career and I'm very busy. So I tell, especially working moms, hey, you can leave the field. You can start new. You can have a brand new career when you get back. That's actually what I did.
Mhm.
And so after I had to go back to graduate school with 4 young kids, I don't recommend it. It was actually very taxing, but I loved going to school for therapy. So I went back to graduate school, got my license, and it was very hard. It was probably one of the hardest things I did because the kids were really young and I don't remember much.
What
But
school did you go to?
I went to, because I was in Raleigh by then, the top marriage and family therapy graduate school was ECU in our state, but ECU was way too far, from this area. So I lucked out. Pfeiffer University, which is based in Charlotte, had a Triangle campus. And so I was able to go to the Triangle campus, and that I was lucky. Otherwise, I don't know if I could have gone to ECU because it's an hour some away. So I went to graduate school, and then, I got my license, and the rest is history, obviously. But I remember knowing that I was meant to do this because I enjoyed graduate school, even writing papers, holding a baby. I was like, okay, I can do this because I love writing about, therapy models and treating Asian American families. And so all of it was really great for me. And then obviously just coming full circle after I started my practice, I think by mistake or by coincidence, someone asked me to speak at an organization on mental health. They're like, hey, you're a mental health clinician and you're Asian. We need you to speak to the Asian business group at our organization. Can you do it? And then I did it like several years ago, and then it stuck. So it became just easy for me because, again, I used to be a journalist. So it came easy, and then writing content. And then so I do treat, obviously, clients, but then a big part of my clinical practice is doing a lot of speaking. And so that's what I mean by coming full circle, being a journalist, being able to speak comfortably, and then being clinically trained and working now with the API community. So that's a little bit about me. I want to say what this person said about being it was hurtful to watch the attacks on the Filipinos. Yeah, I'm sure. And someone actually, I think it was a client that actually asked me, going, hey, Jeanie, is it normal for me to feel so triggered when I see it happening around the world and feel like, she actually said, I'm not in imminent danger, but I feel like it's still really triggering for me. And I go, yeah, you don't have to be in imminent danger to feel traumatized, no matter what we're relating to it, because these are Asian Americans. And so these are our community members. So of course, and especially when you're seeing the attack on elderly, it could be our grandparents. I mean, that's why people are relating that, going, gosh, that could be my aging mom, my aging dad, my grandparents. And so of course people are triggered watching that. And thanks for sharing that, Kathy. It is hurtful. I mean, that's why I stopped watching. It's so hard when you see that went viral, that video in New York.
Yeah, that's terrible. I mean, thank God everybody has cell phones and there are security cameras everywhere. So, hopefully people can't get away with their crimes and assaults. And another sad thing about the Filipino American community is I've read that the Filipino American nurses have died more from COVID in proportion to, the percentage of Filipino nurses in the US. So I don't know why that was, but it probably because a lot of the Filipinos were the ones giving more direct patient care in the COVID wards. I mean, it is really
there's a lot of COVID numbers we're not really aware of besides anti-Asian hate. And I really like what this Kayak 7 Seas person says. Here, it's strange hearing all these racial issues going on. My wife has been in the U.S. for 26 years and we never really experienced it. Well, I've been in the U.S. since what? So 46 years.
Wow.
And you'd be surprised how you may not experience it covertly. It could be overtly, but it could be covert. Microaggressions. I think more often than not, most of us have these microaggressions spoken to us or said to us or done to us, right? And they're much more covert, kind of under the radar, but those add up over time to be hurtful, which is why when just Atlanta specifically, that was really the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of people going, wow, this is really bringing up memories of what I went through, experiencing my own experiences with racism, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's great when someone says they haven't experienced it, but then sometimes people aren't aware until they really think about some of these microaggressions.
Mhm.
They're microaggressions that we're not aware of. So there's a lot of education to be done too.
Well, when you were growing up in Delaware, were there a lot of Koreans around there or
No,
Asian people?
I was the token Asian. And so I experienced a lot of these comments, like, what are you eating? What's the kind of food you eat? Your hair, I wanted to have blonde hair, I wanted to be blonde and blue eyed, right?
Mhm.
Now I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Mhm.
Being Asian. I'm proud to be Asian. I think it's important to say that you are proud. I am proud being a second generation. I'm a second generation Korean American.
Mhm.
My parents came with me as a baby. I was born in Seoul, Korea, and then came here. So, and I was brought up here pretty much. But again, growing up, I struggled with being Asian. Like I
Mhm.
didn't like it, and
Yeah.
because everyone around me was white or
Mhm.
non-Asian. So I was like, oh, something's, and when you're a kid, you just want to fit in. You
Mhm.
don't want to stand out. You don't want to be like, oh, look at my black hair, which now is highlighted. But I meant, or people looking at, oh, look, you look different, or you're eating different foods. I just remember being like, oh, gosh, people are just looking at this. Now I think it's so neat. Look at K-pop and K-drama. So when you talked about my YouTube,
Yeah, let's talk
I'm
about
more
your
deeply
YouTube
about that.
channel.
Yeah, I know.
Sell your
Yeah, I know
channel.
you don't watch K-dramas, but let me tell you something. I have a YouTube channel, by the way, called Nuna's Nunchi. Nuna means older sister in Korean, and Nunchi means eye measure, like observing in Korean. It's a very unique Korean word. But I did that because I work with a lot of young professionals and college students, and I talk a lot about K-dramas, and I use K-dramas to normalize mental health and talk about what mental health looks like in the family system, in the AAPI community. So that's how that came about. And K-dramas, let me tell you, they are universal. I mean,
Yeah.
you may not watch them, but you're in the minority. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, there
Um,
are. I hear there's
Everybody
a lot of
loves
like
watching
white and
K-dramas.
black people that are
Yeah.
really into Korean
Oh, yeah.
dramas.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Some of my black friends, they school me on K-dramas. I'm like, I didn't see that K-drama. They're like, you didn't see it? So there's K-dramas and then there's K-pop. So to be Asian now, it's really empowering. So I want to, bring that up to you because I never would have imagined that I would be talking about K-dramas as a clinician, bringing it into my work to help folks understand mental health, and then also be proud that we have K-dramas that everyone's watching and they're on Netflix, right? So I have friends who are like, yeah, I started watching K-dramas because they got popping up on my Netflix feed. And finally I was like, let me just watch this K-drama. And then they got hooked, right? And then there's K-pop, which pretty much everyone listens to BTS is gone viral, right?
Yeah.
Yay,
Yeah.
Kathy. So check out my YouTube channel. Let me know what you think. Nuna's
I'm
Nunchi.
sorry,
But
did I misspell your channel? How do you spell it again?
no, you spelled it right.
Noochi?
You N-O-O-O, sorry, Nunchi. You got to add the N. Nunchi.
Oops.
You said Nunchi. Nunchi.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. You're multitasking, hosting, and talking. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for asking about that. But again, I'm talking about it because I think it's super cool that K-dramas are universal and people love watching them across the world. Sorry. And then you have K-pop that I maybe started listening to recently, and kids listen to it all the time, and my kids are kind of into it. But I think it's so cool because growing up, I never would imagine that K-pop would be cool, right? Because I wanted to hide all things Asian when I was younger, and not even show off the fried rice that my mom would bring me to school.
Aw.
But
Or
now
kimchi.
I know, right? Yeah, I mean, people go that. But now when I was raising my kids, even in North Carolina, they loved when I packed them Korean leftovers, right?
Oh.
They would be like, oh, could we have leftover bulgogi? And I'd be like, that is so weird that my kids want to bring leftover Korean food to school. But to me, that was a really, I want to say, empowering moment going, that's super cool that my kids don't have that same experience. So going back to the person saying that they lived and never experienced racism, I agree. I mean, I think my kids are having a different experience, but that doesn't mean they won't be faced with it. So it's always good to be educated on it. So I really hope that there's more education in the public school system. That was one of the things I was calling for, educational reform. We need more public school education on racism, you know?
So Kathy is going to subscribe.
Oh my God. Yeah. Blackpink. Of course. Who doesn't love Blackpink? You know?
So what do you do on your channel? Like, are a lot of them reactions, or are you talking about
I do. No, most of them are deep dives where I'll take an episode or a couple scenes and break it down to use as examples to help people understand family dynamics, understand, specific mental health concepts like the stress of caretakers. And I say it through an Asian lens, right? So because it's not just to the API community, but it's really understanding Asian culture and bringing that out. And I'm enjoying it. Again, I started it because I work with so many students and young professionals. And I just coincidentally started bringing in Kdramas when I would talk to them going, hey, did you ever see this Kdrama? And then and people would be like, yeah. And then I would make a connection and it really hit close to home. And then the other thing about Kdramas is, honestly, don't laugh, but even with families and parents, I give it to them as homework. I was like, here's your homework, especially when I'm working with parents. I go, I need you to look at episode 13 of Reply 1988 on Netflix. And I need you to look at what the dad says to the son. And I need you to be like that. And so we're going to practice it. So it's like a visual. And yes, this is a clinician using Kdramas. And trust me, everyone's watching it. So it's, even if you're not watching it, they'll be like, all right, I got to watch this Netflix episode that Jeannie's making me do for homework.
That is so interesting. Wow.
That's how I use it. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Wow. This is such interesting way to like incorporate Kdrama into therapy. Yeah.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, people find, and Kdramas, maybe I'll get you started, Judy, but the theme of Kdramas is resiliency and hope. And strength. And really, there is a lot of that in Kdramas, and that's why people watch, because they can be very uplifting. Now, of course, there's some themes like you still see some sexism, and that you see that anywhere, right? But overall, what Kdramas really show is someone going through life struggles and then overcoming them. And of course, people love that story.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I did watch a little bit of that very popular Kdrama from a year or two ago where the guy was like owning a bar, and then that
Itaewon Class.
Yeah. I read
that's a great one. That is a great one because they have a black character in there.
Yeah,
and he's a really well-liked guy. Yeah, and I actually heard him speak once. No, I would highly recommend you start there. It's a very progressive Kdrama. That's really progressive Kdrama.
But it's over. Is it over now?
Yeah, it's over. So you could just binge watch it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. When I have time, my kids are a lot younger than your kids. I mean, it's amazing how you got them all out of the house so quickly.
Oh, I know. But you remember I was living in a fog for 10 years. But I was going to say, I will share this. Kdramas, depending on how old your kids are, you can watch them with your kids. They're rated G. Some of them have such good family storylines. And because it's cultural, you really relate, right? You're watching an Asian family. So it's really good teachings even about the Asian culture. So I do recommend it with families, depending on the age, probably like 11 and up. You could watch with your kids. Like I said, it's rated G, which is another reason why a lot of people like them, because they're clean. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's important. Yeah. You don't have profanity. Well, you might get some Korean curse words occasionally, but not really. It's just really clean drama. Yeah, I think I'm thinking movies, but it's my self-care, which that's another thing. I don't just do it for my clients. Watching Kdramas is a huge part of my self-care. It's how I unwind and turn off everything that I have to turn off at the end of the day and watch a Kdrama. And I watch it with my husband and my kids, the kids at home. I make them watch. Yeah. Okay. Time to watch a Kdrama. Family time.
Yeah, you're selling me on it. This will be our family bonding moment because, my husband's Korean is very, very rusty, and he needs to be able to communicate with his relatives better. So I think
if your husband's Korean, it'll improve. I mean, tell him I empathize with him. My Korean's not that good, but it does help you practice, and hearing it, helps. And then it does help you appreciate the food. You see all the culture. So my kids have actually learned a lot watching Kdramas. They'll jokingly say stuff in Korean because they watch Kdramas.
Which one is the best then? Which one do you like the most?
Well, Itaewon Class. How old are your kids?
Well, the younger one is 6, almost 6.
Okay. Oh, okay. There's some fighting in that, but that's
Uh-oh.
still a clean drama. That's a really good drama. But for a family drama, oh, there's so many. Gosh, you're putting me on the spot. Well, for you and your husband, you definitely need to watch Crash Landing. It's a
Oh, yeah, I've
romantic
heard of it.
drama. Okay. That one. But with the family, especially, how old's your older kid?
Well, I don't think he really cares because he just wants to watch cartoons like Fanboy and Chum Chum. So,
Ah,
but he's like 11 and a half. Yeah. So
11.
he'd probably be more into cartoons.
He
Yeah.
may, then he may like some of the webtoons. See, a lot of the K dramas, not a lot, sorry, they're based on webtoons,
Mhm.
famous Korean webtoons. So
Oh.
some of them have really unique storylines. So I guess with your 11-year-old, he could 200 pound beauty that's a good one. That's a movie. It's okay not to be okay. It's a little bit more mature, I would say, because it's on mental illness. But
Oh.
each in one class, your 11-year-old might like it because it's about, yes, it's set in a bar, but it's about resiliency. There's some cool scenes in there that the male protagonist is a hero, really fighting for his just for his business and working hard. And then you see a lot of people working hard and like a group of friends, camaraderie's in there. You see
Mhm.
racism in there, which is a good example. He may like it. You
Mhm.
could just see it help. But again, I've recommended it to families just to watch together, and it's a great bonding experience too.
Okay, I
But
think
I'll
I'll
think
look
of ones
for Crash
offline. But yeah,
Landing.
the ones that Kathy mentioned, It's Okay Not to Be Okay, is a great one, but a little bit more mature for a kid.
Okay. Okay, how interesting. Well, as if I don't have enough spare time, things
Oh
to
yeah, I
do.
know. Sometimes I'm sleep deprived watching these K dramas, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you more about your therapy practice though. Like, do you ever get like the feeling like some of your older like Korean or Asian clients like they feel embarrassed to be talking to you because sometimes they don't want other fellow Koreans or Asian people to know about their mess of a family. Like everything's supposed to look good and,
Mhm.
like especially if they're into church, they don't want
Yeah, that's a
everybody knowing.
great question. You know what? Yes, sometimes when they seek me out, they come to me from a referral, right? Somebody who has encouraged them to come see me. I only take referrals now. I will say that not so much embarrassed, a little bit sheepish, right? But honestly, that's my job to make them feel comfortable and not judged. At the end of the day, I say, I'm glad you're here. At the end of the day, you want to come and you want to help your family and you want to be better, right? And you want to be happier. So I think within like the first 20 minutes, my goal is to make them comfortable. And usually I don't, and then after that, I don't experience it again. And then they get comfortable enough that they don't care. They'll share
Oh,
stuff, right? Yeah, but you're
yeah.
right. I mean, just to get them to therapy, the stigma surrounding that is big, but I'm seeing a lot more people, especially second generation, like parents like me, right, who
Mhm.
have grown up here. They're much more open to therapy now. When you're talking about the immigrant population, yeah, that's a little bit more rare. I don't really see the immigrant population, but I see
Mhm.
their kids that are adults and then their kids, right?
Yeah.
So I think there is just a population you may never see. Some of the immigrant parents don't really know or understand that concept of therapy. So I've I've counseled a lot of families about their own parents, their aging parents, where they struggle going, hey, my parents really could use therapy, but they're 70 years old and they're not going to come to therapy. And I go, okay, then stop trying. That's another thing where I say, you can't change somebody. You can't change their mind to come to therapy, but you can go to therapy to help you deal with your
Mhm.
parent. That's what I say, you know?
Mhm.
But no, that's a great question. And you're right. A lot of churchgoers, they have their spiritual faith, which is to me an asset because it helps you get through things. So I always bring spirituality if they bring that in to therapy to use to empower families to, in the sense of, hey, your spiritual faith, if you pray, then continue to pray for your mental health. But no, I think generally speaking, a lot of people are getting past that embarrassment. They may be sheepish in the first 20 minutes, but usually it goes away.
Yeah, because they've already sought you out, so they know
They've already
that
sought me out, and
they
my
need
goal
your
is
help. Yeah.
comfortable and real, and I make things clear about also I'm a parent, so I try to empathize both ends, right, with the teens, because I used to be one of them growing
Mhm.
up in a family struggling with cultural conflicts, and then
Mhm.
parents. I'm a parent. So I think I have that unique angle. I tend to use that as a clinician going, hey, I understand your kids because I was a second generation Asian American struggling with my own parents who are immigrant parents. And then you guys, I understand you because you're parents and I'm a parent. So, yeah, so I love working with families. That's why I'm a family therapist.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Well, we've already exceeded an hour. So I think, unfortunately, I will just cut it short, but hopefully you can be a guest in some future live stream.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
yeah,
let's
I mean,
do this
I'm really
again.
psyched about checking out some of those K-dramas and watching some more of your YouTube channel after my
I have a
trial.
feeling, Judy, you're going to come to me and be like, Jeanie, I'm hooked. Trust me. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
Okay, we'll see. At least it can be a family bonding thing because you're telling me
Yes.
that a lot of it is family okay for the whole family.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and I'll think
Yeah.
of more and I'll email you, but because there's so many good ones. I'm just like off the bat, I'm just trying to think, you know. But 8-1 class is a really good one. It's like I said, very progressive, and your 11-year-old might like it because it's entertaining. Thank you, Kathy, for being so engaging.
Thank you guys for all being here. I'm just so glad that you guys are willing to spend a Friday night talking to us about some serious, Asian assault on Asian Americans and mental health issues. And thank you, Jeanie, for being willing to be on the show on such last minute notice too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'll end the broadcast right now, and hope everybody enjoys their Easter weekend if you celebrate Easter, and hopefully I'll see you guys at the next live stream. Thank you.